It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
And I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the Insiders, and we're about a month out from the Democrat primary for governor. Chuck, this is getting more exciting by the day. How do you think it's going to turn out?
Well, it's a little bit surprising that we've, within a very short period of time here, had two candidates drop out. Missy Hughes, former Secretary of the Department of WEDC, Economic Development, and David Crowley, the County Executive of Milwaukee, two really outstanding people. I think everybody thinks the world of David Crowley over in Milwaukee, a great person, great backstory, great good leader over in Milwaukee County. And Missy Hughes did a marvelous job at WEDC, great person who's done a lot of really good things. The business community was able to work with her, and yet she's a good Democrat. So both of those people then endorsed Sara Rodriguez, and I guess that let's launch into it. We're now 3 of the 7 candidates are on the Sara Rodriguez bandwagon, and I do think that that's helping her. She's doing well. It looks to me like it's going to be a 3-way race. If you look at the polling, I guess you'd have to say that, with Sara Rodriguez, Francesca Hong, and Mandela Barnes being the 3 candidates who are there and really look like they have a good chance at winning this election. And I'll tell you what, the endorsements of these other candidates, who are quality people, certainly helps the Sara Rodriguez campaign. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we move forward. Francesca Hong is working with the Democratic Socialist side. Mandela Barnes has his own lane and has a lot of name recognition from previous run for office. So I think those 3 will remain out there as the strongest candidates. I don't know where the polling is exactly right now, but I would say that, you know, if we go back to the early days when this first started, they said that 80% of people voting in the Democratic primary wanted the person who had the greatest likelihood of winning in the general election. I think most Democrats that I've talked to analyzing that would say if it's those 3 people, it would be Sara Rodriguez who would be the most likely to win. But I don't think that you should count out either person. And this is a year when Democrats have, in other states, done some different things. And the Democratic Socialists have had some say. But I think before it's all over, if I had to bet my money, I think Sarah's in a pretty strong position.
Well, as you know, all year long, I have been pointing out that I thought that Representative Hong and Mandela Barnes were in the lead. Rodriguez was coming up. I've seen Mandela Barnes. I get the feeling he's starting to tail off a little bit. Hasn't gained the sort of traction you would have thought with someone with that kind of name ID. But the Hong campaign just keeps going. They've run a very smart campaign. They've been very effective on social media, very effective in the grassroots level. There's not a place in Wisconsin you don't go that you don't see a Hong sign. She's going to have a lot of strength in Dane County, which is the largest block of votes in the Democratic primary. I've heard so many Democrats over the last 6 months tell me, well, don't worry, we got opposition books on both Barnes and on Hong. They're not going to make it to the primary. Well, that right now they're in the lead. And I think that Hong stands a very good chance to win. 2 points. You're right. A number of people have dropped out of the race and they have endorsed Rodriguez. Who says their followers follow along there? I don't know that that's a given. And they didn't have that many followers in the first place. That's why they dropped out. So, I mean, it seems to me that people in primaries gravitate towards the candidate with passion, the candidate who has energy and fire. You got all sorts of choices out there. Most of the time, they don't choose boring. Most of the time, they don't choose bland. Tony Evers, grand exception. But most of the time, people go for the passionate candidate. And I think that's Hong in this race. And I think she stands a good chance of winning here. I really don't believe that so far Rodriguez's campaign has gained a great deal of traction. She looks like she will have the most money to finish off here. That is a very important factor. There's a lot of late breakers, a lot of late deciders in these primary elections. But in a low turnout election, I generally think the candidate with passion is the most likely to win. That'd be Hong in this race.
Well, let me start out by saying that I think Scott is right. Let me agree with him. I think that it does appear, and I've heard other people say that they think that the Mandela Barnes thing does seem to be tailing off. And although he started with very high name recognition, it hasn't translated into growth in his numbers. By the way, Tony Evers did translate his name recognition into the growth in the numbers, and by this was leading, and he became the de facto nominee, and did a good job in the general election as well. However, be very afraid, not just afraid, but be very afraid. If you listen to Scott Jensen for your advice as to where the Democrats should be on primary night, I think that the Republican fervent wish, and by the way, I spoke with another speaker of the assembly who said he would be voting for Francesca Hong in the primary. This is a Republican former leader. So I think we have to be careful about that. But Francesca Hong has run a strong campaign. Got to give her credit for that. And has done a lot of grassroots, and she is passionate. But as Scott mentioned, there are problems. When you say not only defund the police, but abolish the police, I think that is probably a deal breaker for most people, even in a Democratic primary. You know, we all understand that we want to avoid having to use police when we don't have to, but we do need to have police. So it'll be interesting to see how that and other issues may play in. But I also do think that you're seeing that other knowledgeable, thoughtful people who could definitely run this state and be governor of this state have said, we're getting out, but we think Sara Rodriguez is the person to back. So it's going to be a really tight race. I think Francesca's running a good race. Francesca Hong, Mandela Barnes is in there, and I think Sara Rodriguez is the other one. One of those three, I expect, will be the nominee.
I think the logic that was given to us at the start of this race, that there was like 5 or 6 mainstream Democrats, there's too many in that lane, but people would drop out, and then one of them would rise and capture that crown, and that would be the winning candidate. First of all, we haven't had that many dropouts. There's still too many people splitting up that lane. The largest lane in the Democratic primary remains the progressive lane. And with Barnes beginning to fade, I think that bodes well for Hong. But there's a reason we play the game. We want to see what the real final result is, and we'll be waiting August 11th.
I'll tell you what, I think the nurse who's had executive experience, who's run and won in a Republican seat and flipped that seat in the assembly, a first nurse in the country being elected governor, I think that's pretty progressive. And I think you're going to find out that people feel that that's something they can get behind. But we will see. And Scott's voting for Francesca in the Democratic primary. And Chuck, well, we'll
not going to do it.
All right. We'll see you next time, Scott.
You've been listening to The Insider with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.